Hey beautiful people, my name is Lerai and this is Rai Talks, the place where we discuss all political, international relations, African history. Listen, it's made for Gen Zs from an African Gen Z. And today we are breaking down the G20. What is South Africa's role? What exactly is going on? What does the timeline look like? And a few other things. So if you're ready, let's dive deep into the G20. Let's start with this simple question. What is the G20 and why does it matter? Because if you hear G20 and immediately think just another political summit, I totally get it. The truth is, this is where the world's biggest economic decisions happen. Decisions that shape global trade, control financial markets, and influence economies, especially South Africa. And for 2025, South Africa is leading this group. That means that we have a rare opportunity to push policies that benefit not just us, but the entire African continent. Now, here's the real question. Does leading the G20 mean we actually have power, or are we just running the event while real power players make the decisions? To answer that, we need to understand what the G20 is, how it started, and where South Africa fits into this global power structure. The G20 wasn't always the G20. It actually started as something called the G7, or the Group of Seven. It was created in the 1970s and it included the world's wealthiest economies at the time: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and Japan. These countries made decisions on global trade, stability, and all financial markets. But here's the problem. They were making these decisions without input from most of the world. Then came the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s, which hit the global markets hard. And they realized that they can't make these decisions in isolation. So they included emerging economies, and this is how they grew it. So in 1999, they expanded the group and formed the G20, bringing in countries like China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and others. Now, just because the G20 has 20 members doesn't mean that everybody has equal power, okay? At the top, you have what I'll call the big three: the US, China, and the European Union. These are the dominant economic forces. If there's a debate at the G20, they are usually shaping the final outcome. Then you have secondary powers: Japan, Germany, India, Brazil, and the UK, as well as Canada. They have strong economies, but they don't dictate global policy alone. Then you have the developing markets: South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia, Argentina, and Turkey. These countries have influence, but only if they can align their interests with the powers. Then you have the wild cards: countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. These are players that don't always align with the traditional Western economies, which makes them unpredictable in negotiations. So where does South Africa fit into all of this? Well, South Africa is the only African country that was originally part of the G20. That's a big deal. For years, SA has been expected to represent the entire African continent, but now, with the African Union finally becoming a permanent G20 member, the power dynamic is shifting, and the big question is, will this change anything for Africa's influence in global economic decisions? Whoo! So every year, a different country takes on the G20 presidency. That means they set the agenda, decide what topics get prioritized, and guide discussions throughout the entire year. South Africa will be in this position for 2025, and in political science, there's something called the agenda setting theory. It means that if you control what people talk about, you control what gets done. So think about social media. The person who controls the trending topics controls the conversation, and that's exactly how it works in global politics. South Africa now has a chance to control the conversation, but there's a difference between leading the discussion and actually getting the outcomes we want. If we set weak priorities, we will spend the year talking with no real action. And if we push for the right policies, we can put Africa's biggest economic challenges on the table, things like debt release, trade deals, and climate change. But here's where it gets complicated. One of the biggest obstacles we face is that the G20 is not a voting system. There's no majority rule where countries can just cast a vote and make decisions happen. Instead, everything is based on negotiations. That means that even though South Africa is leading, we still have to convince the most powerful economies, the US, China, and the EU, to agree with us. And that brings us to one of the most important political dynamics in this entire conversation: South Africa's current relationship with the US. Because, guys, it's a little bit shaky. South Africa and the US are not exactly on good terms right now. There have been tensions over our relationship with Russia, our position on global conflicts, and trade policies that don't always align with Western interests. So what does that mean for the G20 summit? It means that South Africa will have to navigate some serious diplomatic challenges while trying to push Africa's agenda forward. The real question is, can we use this moment to shift Africa's role in global decision-making, or will we just be hosting another summit that results in more discussions but no real action? So now that we've laid down the foundation of what the G20 is, who holds the power, and where South Africa fits in, let's move on to the next key question. What does South Africa's G20 presidency actually look like? Because running the G20 isn't just about one big event. It's a year-long process of negotiations, meetings, and political maneuvering. Up next, we break down what happens behind the scenes and what South Africa will be responsible for as the G20 president.